More than 150 migrants have been rescued after the boat they were using to cross the channel caught fire on Tuesday morning, French authorities have said. The boat was attempting to cross to the UK when its engine caught fire, according to the French Maritime Prefecture of the Channel and North Sea. It said 157 people have been rescued and are being taken to port in Boulogne-sur-Mer. There are no reports of anyone having been injured or killed.
Fire on the water. The channel crossing that could have ended in catastrophe. Tonight, somewhere off the coast of Boulogne-sur-Mer,
Well, there you go.
11 vessels are racing against time.
Please do
Not
give
for
this
a
video
shipwreck,
a like and subscribe
not
to our
for a
channel for
storm,
more content
but for
like
fire.
this. And do leave a comment.
Fire
Let me know
on
what
an
you think. Do you think
overcrowded dinghy in the middle of one of the busiest and most dangerous stretches of water on Earth. And if the numbers being reported are accurate, this wasn't just a crossing. This was a disaster waiting to happen. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the channel that looks past the headlines and asks the questions nobody else wants to ask. If you're new here, this is exactly the kind of story we exist for. So stick around, because in a few minutes I'm going to ask you for something, and trust me, it's worth 30 seconds of your time. But first, let's dive into what actually happened out there in the channel, because the details here are genuinely alarming.
Here's what we know so far. A dinghy, and not just any dinghy, but what's being called a mega dinghy, allegedly carrying around 160 people, caught fire while attempting to cross from France to the United Kingdom. Think about that number for a second. 160 human beings packed into an inflatable vessel designed for a fraction of that capacity, out in open water, and then fire breaks out. Whatever caused that spark, and we don't know yet, could be a fuel leak, could be an engine fault, could be something as simple as a discarded cigarette in the wrong place at the wrong time. The outcome could have been catastrophic. We are talking about people trapped on an inflatable boat, surrounded by water, with flames on board. There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. That is about as close to a nightmare scenario as it gets on that stretch of sea.
British border vessels and lifeboats scrambled the moment word came through. 11 vessels in total are now involved in this rescue operation, a number that tells you just how seriously this is being treated, and honestly, how seriously it needs to be treated. This isn't a routine patrol picking up a small boat in calm conditions. This is a full-scale, multi-agency emergency response, unfolding in real time off a French coastal town that has become, whether it likes it or not, ground zero for one of the most contentious and heartbreaking issues facing this country. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Reports suggest that the situation may be serious enough that British vessels could end up docking in France simply to get those on board urgent medical attention faster. Let that sink in for a moment. We're not talking about towing a boat back to Dover for processing. We're talking about a medical situation so pressing that British crews may need to bring survivors ashore on French soil first, because minutes matter. And getting people onto solid ground and into the hands of paramedics could be the difference between life and death. If that happens, it will raise a whole new set of questions. Questions about jurisdiction, about protocol, about what exactly happens when a rescue operation this severe unfolds in waters that sit right on the line between two nations. This is Britain Underneath. And this is exactly the kind of story where the surface headline doesn't even begin to cover what's really going on. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on Britain Underneath, because we are going to be following this story as it develops, and you do not want to miss where this one goes.
Now let's talk about the survivors, because their accounts are already starting to filter through, and they are chilling. Migrants rescued from the Channel have told sources that there were indeed around 160 people crammed onto that single dinghy. If that figure holds up, it would make this one of the most overcrowded crossings ever recorded in the Channel. A body of water that, let's not forget, is already one of the deadliest short-sea crossings in the world for irregular migration. People have died out there before. Families have been torn apart out there before. And every single time one of these so-called mega dinghies sets off,
packed well beyond any reasonable safety limit, the odds of tragedy climb higher and higher. Smugglers are cramming more people onto fewer boats, charging more money for less safety, and treating human lives as cargo. Tonight's fire is a brutal reminder of exactly what that means in practice.
So let's step back for a second and ask the bigger question, because that's what we do here on Britain Underneath. We don't just report the incident, we dig into what it tells us about the wider picture. Why are boats this overcrowded even setting off in the first place? Why does it feel like every few months we're reporting on another near miss, another emergency, another moment where the difference between a rescue story and a mass tragedy came down to sheer luck and the speed of the response teams? This is not a one-off. This is a pattern. And patterns demand scrutiny, not just sympathy and not just outrage. Real hard scrutiny about the systems, the smuggling networks, and the policies on both sides of this channel that have allowed a humanitarian crisis to essentially become routine news.
There's also the operational side of this that deserves real credit, because whatever your views on the broader migration debate, and there are strong views on every side of it, nobody can deny the sheer scale of what these rescue crews do. 11 vessels scrambled at speed, coordinating across a stretch of water that is notoriously busy with commercial shipping, unpredictable currents, and now an active fire. These lifeboat crews and border teams are putting themselves directly into harm's way to pull people out of a burning, sinking situation. That's not politics. That's not a talking point. That is raw human courage, and it deserves to be said plainly. If tonight ends without mass loss of life, it will be because of the people who got in those boats and went straight toward the danger, rather than away from it.
But here's the uncomfortable truth we have to sit with. Every one of these incidents reignites the same exhausting cycle, the same debates, the same divides. Calls for tougher enforcement on one side, calls for safer legal routes on the other. And in the middle of all that noise, actual human beings, men, women, quite possibly children, sitting in the freezing channel, some of them now facing burns, smoke inhalation, shock and trauma that will stay with them long after tonight. Whatever position you hold on this issue, and I know many of you watching have strong opinions, I think we can all agree on one thing. 160 people should never have been on that dinghy in the first place. Not because of where they were going, but because no vessel, in any conditions, should ever be that overloaded. That is where the real failure begins, long before any fire ever breaks out.
We will be tracking this story closely over the coming days. The casualty figures, the cause of the fire, what happens with those French docking arrangements, and whether this becomes the catalyst for another serious policy shift. Because stories like this one rarely stay contained. They ripple outward, into Parliament, into headlines, into the next big debate that shapes how this country handles one of the defining issues of our time.
Take a breath, stay informed, and come back to Britain Underneath, because this is where you get the story underneath the story. The context, the pattern, the parts nobody else is willing to say out loud. If tonight's video did that for you, do us a favour and hit subscribe. Ring that notification bell and drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this conversation is far from over, and neither are we. See you in the next one.